I almost lost my life at 35,000 feet. As the cabin lights flickered, Heather Richardson's fingers slammed into my throat. One moment, I was reviewing the final figures for a $250 million loan on my tablet. Next, I was scrabbling against her grip, gasping for air in Seat 2D of Lufthansa's A380. 10 minutes later, the FAA would yank SkyConnect's entire lending license. What would you do if your breath and your company's future were ripped away mid-flight? I'm Henry Hank Williams, 60, CEO of SkyConnect Finance. After 4 decades in banking and fintech, I've weathered black swans, bear markets, and boardroom backstabbing, but never a flight attendant's chokehold. Born in Queens, I clawed my way through NYU scholarships and industry skepticism to co-author the Williams Amendment for the FAA, an emergency clause granting regulators power to revoke licenses over human rights breaches in the air. Abstract until today. When Heather first ignored my sparkling water request, I chalked it up to a tough workday. But as she served every other passenger, something darker stirred. A low, simmering bias. I pressed the call button. She switched it off. I waited 5 more minutes. No water, no apology. Then came the glass-shattering moment. Heather yanked the drink from my tray, splashing my proposal across my lap. And before I could react, her fingers locked around my windpipe. Panic ricocheted in my chest as cameras flashed. Jason, a younger attendant, lunged, but Heather shoved him away. My world contracted to the burning in my throat, the blur of overhead bins, the urgent whispers of frightened travelers. I remembered every negotiation where I'd stayed calm under fire. Now, I had to draw on that same composure, because a live feed from one of the flashes had already pinged FAA headquarters. As consciousness threatened to slip, one thought anchored me. I will not be silenced. By the time we hit Chicago airspace, an emergency descent was called. 15 minutes later, the FAA triggered the Williams Amendment, revoking our $250 million credit line and grounding SkyConnect's entire portfolio. This was more than personal vindication. It was the opening salvo in a fight for dignity at 35,000 feet and beyond. Stick around to see how a single moment of injustice sparked a full-scale reckoning. I grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment in Queens with my parents, 2 siblings, and more ambition than space. My mother worked double shifts as a nurse. My dad managed the building's maintenance. Even as a kid, I balanced schoolwork with part-time jobs, delivering newspapers before sunrise, tutoring classmates after school, stocking shelves at night. I earned a scholarship to NYU, where I majored in economics and fell in love with financial models. By 22, I was a junior analyst at Midtown's biggest investment bank, burning the midnight oil to prove I belonged. I learned every corner of capital markets, but I also saw the biases that kept small businesses and underserved communities from accessing credit. Over the next 2 decades, I rose through the ranks, associate, vice president, partner, always haunted by the memory of that Queens apartment and the friends who never made it past the bank's front door. In my late 40s, I pitched a radical idea, a fintech platform that could underwrite loans based on community impact metrics rather than just credit scores. Traditional banks said it was too risky. Venture capitalists laughed. But I was stubborn, fueled by those early days when I watched neighbors' dreams stall for lack of funding. I mortgaged my own home, pooled savings with a handful of believers, and launched SkyConnect Finance. Our first year, we broke even. Year 2, we made headlines by financing a hospital expansion in Detroit's East Side and a charter school network in Atlanta. Now, at 60, I'm in the final stretch of negotiating a $250 million syndicated loan with a consortium of global banks. This capital infusion would let us expand into renewable energy projects in underserved regions, exactly the mission I'd dreamed of since NYU. But beyond that, I carry another legacy. 2 years ago, I worked as a senior advisor to the FAA, co-authoring the Williams Amendment. It was meant as a safeguard if any in-flight incident involved human rights violations. Regulators could immediately revoke an airline's financial license. It felt academic then, a footnote in my career. Today, it's very real. As the Airbus climbed to cruising altitude, I stared at my tablet, reviewing term sheets and covenants. Every clause mattered. Every comma could mean millions. I clicked through the details one last time. In a few hours, this loan would either cement SkyConnect's future or shatter it. I took a deep breath, adjusted my tie, and reminded myself of where I came from. No matter how high I climbed, I couldn't forget those early mornings on Queens sidewalks. Because every time I fought for funding, it wasn't just about profits. It was about people who deserved a chance. And I was determined to make sure those chances expanded, starting with this single flight. I pressed the call button once, then again, trying not to let annoyance show. My tray table held a neatly folded napkin, and next to it, the untouched sparkling water with lime I'd ordered. Heather Richardson, hovering at the front of the business cabin, still hadn't acknowledged me. Instead, she gave the same curt nod to every other passenger, white-suited executives and celebrity chefs, before sweeping past. My heart sank. I've flown flagship routes more times than I can count, and first-class service is supposed to be seamless. But Heather's gaze flicked over me like I was a hitchhiker at a toll booth. I caught the flash of smirk when she turned away. A tiny spark of irritation flickered. This wasn't just bad service. It felt intentional. I let out a quiet sigh and closed my laptop. Time to try face-to-face. "Excuse me," I said, voice even. "I ordered sparkling water with lime. May I have it now?" She paused mid-stride, lips tightening. "I'll get to you when I get to you," she snapped, then swept off to serve someone else. My fingers twitched against the edge of the tablet. I leaned back, recalibrating. In that moment, the soft hum of the engine sounded accusatory, and the cabin felt smaller, more claustrophobic. All around me, passengers chatted, flipped through magazines, tapped on screens. Oblivious. I'd navigated hostile boardrooms and hostile markets, but this, being singled out at 35,000 feet, felt like a betrayal of everything I'd earned. I forced a slow breath, reminding myself, stay calm. After all, I'd helped draft the Williams Amendment as a senior FAA advisor, an emergency backstop against precisely this kind of in-flight injustice. Yet, as the seconds ticked by and Heather's cart disappeared again, my professional composure wavered. Something darker was at work here, and I couldn't ignore it any longer. That's when I realized this wasn't about a drink. It was about who gets served and who gets left behind. When my phone buzzed, I half expected another boarding update or a push notification about the loan syndication. Instead, the alert read, FAA notice, Williams override active, immediate review of SkyConnect finance license. My breath hitched. I stared at that screen as the cabin's murmur swelled back around me. It wasn't a mistake or a typo. The FAA had indeed triggered the clause I'd helped write 2 years ago, an emergency protocol empowering regulators to revoke financial licenses in cases of in-flight human rights violations. Abstract legal theory until now. My mind flashed to Washington, D.C., where I'd sat in a sterile conference room, whiteboard scrawled with flow charts, arguing that no one should ever face injustice at 35,000 feet without recourse. Colleagues had dubbed my proposal the Williams Amendment on a lark, but I'd pressed them. If an airline employee assaulted a passenger, there must be teeth behind the policy. Today, those teeth had bitten back. I closed my eyes, picturing Heather's smug face and the sharp angle of her elbow as she shoved Jason aside. The image stung like salt in a wound, but hidden beneath that sting was something else. Leverage. A power I never imagined I'd wield from my seat. Around me, passengers swapped uneasy glances as news tickers on personal screens flipped to Breaking, FAA revokes SkyConnect lending license under Williams override. I could almost see the ripple of disbelief. Executives who'd watched me negotiate million-dollar deals on CNBC now realizing their own credit lines were at risk. Emotion crashed through me in waves. First, vindication. Justice served cold from the very agency I'd advised. Then, a flash of caution. This wasn't just about retribution. It was about responsibility. If I used this clause carelessly, I risked harming countless small businesses counting on SkyConnect's capital. I set my tablet aside and took a steadying breath, eyes scanning the cabin. Jason hovered nearby. Guilt and relief wrestled on his face. Heather's triumphant look had vanished, replaced by pale fear as she grasped her mistake. I leaned forward, gathering my composure. This was more than a clause on paper. It was a statement: we all have rights, even at cruising altitude, and if we fight for them, we can change the rules of the game. The plane's engines hummed. My heart thumped in time. In that moment, I knew two things. The Williams Amendment would define the next chapter of my life, and the world would never view first-class service the same way again. I watched in stunned silence as Heather Richardson re-emerged from the galley with a drink cart, this time with a malicious glint in her eye. She skidded to my side, slammed the glass of sparkling water onto my laptop keyboard, and sent a cold cascade of bubbles and lime-scented liquid across my proposal documents. My heart sank faster than that spill. I instinctively grabbed a cocktail napkin and began dabbing at the wet pages, masking my outrage with practiced calm. My fingers trembled. You can't show anger in first class, I reminded myself. Not when negotiations for a $250 million loan depend on your every professional move. Heather crossed her arms, lips curled in a smug half-smile. Turbulence, she offered, as if that explained the drenched covenant pages. Around us, a few passengers turned to stare. Some raised their eyebrows. Others sat frozen. Jason, the junior attendant who tried to help earlier, hovered awkwardly behind Heather. He cleared his throat. Sir, I'm so sorry. Let me get you fresh copies of those documents. His voice wavered between apology and defiance. Heather shot him a warning look. It's fine, I said, standing so that the overhead lights would catch the sheen on my suit. I folded the soaked papers with deliberate precision. No need to make a fuss. Inside, fury smoldered, an ember that threatened to ignite. A murmur rippled through the cabin when a white businessman 2 rows back cleared his throat. That was uncalled for, he said, his tone measured but firm. Heads turned again. Heather's smirk faltered. Jason gave me a grateful nod. My pulse hammered as I realized this moment was bigger than me. The same conflict that fueled my work in underserved communities was unfolding here. Who gets respect? Who gets service? And who gets brushed aside? I bent to retrieve the replacement proposal Jason held out. As I smoothed the crisp, dry pages back onto my tray table, I caught Heather's reflection in the polished metal of the service cart, her face momentarily unreadable. I straightened my shoulders. I would not be the angry man she expected. Instead, I would be the calm professional who knew exactly what power he held and when to use it. Because at 35,000 feet, dignity isn't just a courtesy, it's a right. And I intended to remind everyone of that. My chest tightened before I even realized what was happening. 1 second, I was holding a fresh stack of loan documents. The next, Heather Richardson's hand shot out, wrapping around my throat with shocking speed. My fingers lashed at her wrist, heart hammering so loud I thought the engines would hear it. Air erupted into screams. Jason surged forward, but Heather shoved him aside like he was a rag doll. Her eyes were wild, less a flight attendant than a cornered animal, and I tasted fear in every bubble of the sparkling water still on my lips. Every instinct screamed to fight back, yet I hesitated. A single wrong move, and any sympathy I'd built would vanish. "Stop it!" a voice rang out. A young woman 2 rows back, Amara, I later learned, had been recording. She stood, phone raised, her tone fierce. "He didn't do anything." The cabin blurred with phone lights and frantic whispers. Heather's grip tightened again, cutting off my air. My vision swam. The cabin spun. My hands caught her forearm and wrenched sideways, searching for an escape. I gasped, each breath a battle. Around us, passengers rose in unison, executives, a retired cop, even an elderly woman leaning on her cane. They formed a barrier between Heather and me. Jason scrambled beside me, voice shaking. "Sir, are you okay?" Heather recoiled, breathless, as if startled awake. Her face drained of color. The tension snapped. Jason grabbed her arm, pulling her back. Two burly businessmen intercepted her path, ushering her toward the galley. Patricia, the lead attendant, appeared at the doorway, eyes flicking from me to Heather, realization dawning. I sank back into my seat, fingers on my throat, lungs ragged. My documents lay scattered on the floor, like my dignity had been moments ago. Passengers snapped photos, recorded statements. Some offered water, others whispered apologies. In that chaos, I felt a fierce pride. This wasn't just about me. It was everyone who ever had their humanity stripped away mid-air. As the hum of solidarity rose in the cabin, I tapped out a silent vow. I would use this moment, and every ounce of the Williams Amendment, to make sure no one else ever faced that chokehold alone. The captain's voice crackled over the PA before I could catch my breath. "Ladies and gentlemen, due to a medical emergency, we're diverting to Shannon Airport. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. We expect to land in approximately 10 minutes. The cabin erupted, heartbeats pounding in unison with the engines. I pressed my hand to my throat, still throbbing where Heather's grip had dug in. My pulse raced. Relief that help was coming, but dread for what was next. Jason was immediately at my side, pressing a small water bottle into my hand. "Sir, we have medics on the tarmac. You're safe now." His voice trembled, guilt and concern warring in his eyes. I managed a grateful nod. Every ounce of oxygen felt precious. Around us, passengers slid their seats upright. A retired nurse in 3A offered me an ice pack. A businessman dropped his tablet to help Jason clear the cabin row. Strangers who'd been silent minutes ago now hovered protectively. I caught Amara's eye, her phone still recording, her expression fierce. Outside the windows, the sky shifted from endless blue to a bank of gray clouds. The seatbelt sign stayed lit as the A380 descended, banking over Ireland's rugged coastline. Below, the green patchwork of fields slipped past in a blur. By the time the wheels touched Shannon's runway, a team of paramedics and local Garda officers stood at the jetway. EMTs in crisp white coats were already lining up stretchers. Officers conferred in low tones. I inhaled, bracing myself for the next stage of this ordeal. The door opened with a pneumatic hiss. I rose slowly, careful not to jostle my throat. Jason supported me at the shoulder. The nurse pressed a hand to my arm. I took one step, then another, each footfall echoing down the aisle lined with witnesses offering encouraging murmurs. In that dragging moment, my mind whirled with emotions. Shock at how quickly violence could erupt mid-air. Relief that help was waiting. And a flicker of triumph knowing the Williams override had been triggered. This wasn't just a personal victory. It was proof that justice could land as swiftly as we did. As I descended the stairs onto Shannon's tarmac, lights from ambulances and police vehicles painted the fuselage in red and blue. My heart pounded, but beneath it all was a quiet resolve. I'd survived this descent, and now we'd use every tool, legal, financial, and moral, to make the skies safe for everyone. We settled into the small conference room at Shannon's executive lounge, papers and tablets spread across the table like a war map. Diana Washington, our chief counsel, tapped her pen against the briefing deck. Yvonne Decker, PR director, had already queued up crisis statements on her tablet. I exhaled slowly. FAA just invoked the Williams override. Our license is revoked mid-flight, I reminded them, voice still rasping. A collective intake of breath filled the room. Diana's eyes shone with a mix of triumph and caution. Legally, this is unprecedented and airtight. "We helped craft this clause ourselves," she said. She paused, lowering her voice. "But regulators could face pushback. Airlines and banks might lobby Congress to narrow that authority." Yvonne leaned forward, scrolling through the live news feed. Headlines flashed. "Sky Connect grounded by its own CEO's amendment." She lifted her gaze. "Public reaction is trending positive. Viewers love the karma angle. But our clients, small businesses counting on these funds, need reassurance. If we lose all credibility as a reliable lender, we collapse our entire mission." I nodded. The thrill of vindication flickered with responsibility. "We can't celebrate at their expense," I said. "Our mission was always about people who lack access to capital." Diana flipped to the next slide. "We'll issue a statement acknowledging the enforcement, express solidarity with passengers, and outline our plan to negotiate a temporary credit line under oversight." She tapped the screen. "Meanwhile, we'll meet with FAA officials to ensure the clause can't be misused against us in non-emergency contexts." Yvonne drafted the opening lines aloud. "Sky Connect Finance supports the FAA's commitment to passenger safety and human rights at altitude. We will work collaboratively to reinstate our license under strengthened safeguards that protect all borrowers." I felt the tension ease. We had leverage, but also an obligation to our clients, to the communities we served, and to the principle that nobody's dignity should ever be negotiable. As we finalized talking points, I realized our fight had shifted. It wasn't just about one flight or one clause. It was about embedding respect and accountability into every contract, every boardroom, and every cabin, wherever power meets people. We convened via video call that evening, Diana, Yvonne, Tariq, and me, each framed by our home offices. The glow of multiple screens underscored how global this moment had become. I cleared my throat. "I'm not interested in a hush-money settlement," I said. "This isn't just about Sky Connect or Heather Richardson. It's about every passenger who's ever been demeaned or disregarded at cruising altitude." On the screen, Diana nodded. "Legally, we could settle for minimal damages," she admitted. "But you'd be bound by a non-disclosure agreement, and this story would vanish from public view." Yvonne chimed in, scrolling through social feeds. "People are rallying behind you. Hashtags like #HatchedEqualSkies and Justice at 35K are already trending." Tariq, our COO, leaned forward. "Competitors would love nothing more than to see us underfoot right now, but they'd also fear this amendment more than any regulator." I let that sink in. The Williams override wasn't just a clause, it was a beacon. I took a steady breath. "We're launching the Equal Skies initiative," I announced. "I'm allocating $5 million from my personal foundation to fund legal support, bias training programs, and a 24/7 reporting hotline for discriminated passengers." There was a beat of stunned silence, then Diana's voice. "That's bold." "It's necessary," I replied. "Sky Connect will share our data on in-flight discrimination. Totally transparent. We'll partner with civil rights groups and airlines committed to real change." Yvonne's eyes lit up. "This will reshape the narrative. You won't just be the CEO who fought back. You'll be the leader creating a lasting solution." On the call, I saw determination mirrored on every face. We weren't just weathering a crisis. We were defining a movement. As I signed off, I felt a surge of purpose. The Equal Skies initiative wasn't just a PR strategy. It was the fulfillment of a promise I'd made long ago. That dignity at 35,000 feet would never again be negotiable. My inbox blew up with briefings from every corner. Lufthansa's legal team had launched a full-scale smear campaign. Overnight, reputable aviation blogs were running stories headlined, "Senior Passenger Instigates In-Flight Disturbance," quoting anonymous crew members claiming I'd refused to comply, and became belligerent before any assault occurred. A press release landed from Becker and Hayes, an aggressive PR law firm known for burying victims under legal intimidation. They alleged I'd boarded the flight visibly intoxicated, and hinted at undisclosed prior incidents. Screenshots of my personal social feed, doctored to look inflammatory, circulated on LinkedIn and Twitter. Even respected financial columnists began questioning my judgment. I leaned back in my hotel suite's dim glow, absorbing it all. Fury flickered. This was classic character assassination. Deflect attention from the real misconduct and muddy the waters. But I'd anticipated this. I tapped a secure message. Do not engage directly. Truth will out. Diana's note pinged back. They're desperate. We'll prepare a factual rebuttal and simultaneously release unedited footage from multiple passenger devices. Yvonne added. We should also highlight Jason's affidavit and Amara's influencer testimony. Contrast their smears with documented accounts. I exhaled, steadying myself. Smear tactics were nothing new in business, but using them to defend blatant racism and assault was beyond the pale. I closed my eyes and remembered my Queen's roots, how contempt from insiders had once tried to derail me. Then I smiled. If they want a publicity war, they'll get one. I typed back. Truth is our ally. Within the hour, our team drafted a concise press statement. Lufthansa's allegations are categorically false. Multiple independent witnesses, video recordings, and medical reports confirm the sequence of events. We stand by our eyewitness accounts and demand an immediate retraction of these defamatory claims. As we hit send, a fresh wave of clarity washed over me. This wasn't just a corporate spat. It was the same fight for dignity that had fueled every step of my career. And now, the world was watching which side chose integrity. I scheduled the live stream for prime time, 8 p.m. New York, when both Wall Street and social feeds are buzzing. The broadcast window showed my face beside two familiar frames. Jason, the young flight attendant, and Amara, the influencer whose footage first exposed the assault. The on-air chyron read, Live. Sky Connect CEO Henry Williams with key witnesses on in-flight assault. The moderator's voice echoed in my earpiece. Mr. Williams, thank you for joining us, alongside Jason and Amara. Let's begin with Jason. What did you see? Jason cleared his throat, posture straight. I saw Heather Richardson grab Mr. Williams's throat after he simply asked for his drink. I tried to intervene, and she pushed me away. I have a sworn statement and video from my station camera. He nodded toward the second frame. His phone displayed the time-stamped clip. Amara leaned in next. I've recorded hundreds of incidents, but this one was unmistakable. He's calm, composed, and unarmed. The assault was unprovoked. I uploaded unedited footage to my channel. Immediately. Her screen showed view counts climbing past 1 million in real time. The moderator turned to me. Mr. Williams, what does this mean for Sky Connect's future? I inhaled, steadying my voice. It means accountability isn't optional. Those videos were the catalyst for the Williams override, revoking our $250 million credit line mid-flight. But it also proved that when you document the truth, justice can't be denied. Comments scrolled up. Truth wins. CEO stands up for all of us. Med equal skies. A financial analyst chimed in. Wall Street tends to punish controversy. How will investors react? I smiled. Investors respect integrity. We'll rebuild stronger, with transparency, with equal access to credit for everyone, and with the knowledge that dignity matters at every altitude. As the stream ended, the final graph popped up. Sky Connect's real-time stock tickers rebounding. In that moment, I realized, truth wasn't just our defense. It was our most powerful asset. 6 months later, I stood at the podium of the International Aviation Equity Summit in Washington, D.C., the Equal Skies Initiative banner towering behind me. The room was packed. Airline executives, policymakers, civil rights leaders, all here because we refused to let one mid-air injustice become forgotten. I closed my eyes, recalling that moment in Seat 2D when Heather Richardson's grip nearly stole my breath. Today, that fear had transformed into purpose. The FAA had baked Williams' override reporting requirements into regulatory policy, mandating all airlines to submit quarterly human rights compliance data. 15 major carriers had already signed our voluntary charter, pledging transparent incident reporting and rigorous bias training. I opened my eyes and scanned the audience. In the front row sat Amara and Jason, my unexpected allies, smiling proudly. I took a steadying breath. Dignity at 35,000 feet should never be negotiable, I began, voice firm. Because of your partnership, we've reduced reported in-flight discrimination by 32% across participating airlines. More importantly, we've built the mechanisms to track, to learn, and to improve. Applause rippled through the hall. I continued. SkyConnect Finance has appointed new leadership, committed to embedding equity into every underwriting decision. Our data shows that lending to underserved entrepreneurs has increased by 45%, proving that fairness and profitability go hand in hand. I paused as a projection displayed real-time stats. Bias reports down, satisfaction scores up. This progress sprang from a simple truth. When you document injustice, you empower change. The Equal Skies initiative has already funded 120 community workshops and legal aid grants, all supported by the original $5 million seed fund. A standing ovation greeted my closing. Let's carry this momentum beyond aviation, into every boardroom, every lobby, every home. Because when we refuse to accept indignity, we redefine what's possible. As I stepped off stage, I felt a quiet satisfaction and a stirring hope. This wasn't just a victory for one CEO. It was a turning point for every traveler who demands respect. And our journey toward true equity was just beginning. If you saw someone being treated unfairly on a flight like Hank was, what would you do first? Drop your answers in the comments below. I want to hear your stories.